On time. We have to report that we're going to stall a little bit in the opening session here because we have not had our amplifier and turntable delivered to us yet. It's on the way, they tell us. And this is a music session, and all three of the panelists have brought a whole fistful of sample records to play to illustrate some of the points we're going to make. And so we ask your indulgence as we kind of kill a little bit of time in talking to you about some theory without some actual demonstrations. One of the things that we would like to focus our attention on at this particular session is the way we as callers are able to use the music that we use as a programming tool, as a device for entertaining the dancers, as a device for impacting the total effect of our overall program. One of the most important things that we all keep in mind all the time is that we are first and foremost a dance activity. And while it is indeed possible for someone to dance to someone beating a stick or someone beating a tin can with a rock, it will provide a degree of rhythm. Without total music, the total dance experience suffers dramatically, and we need music to keep the activity where it belongs. And what our session here is intended... Hi there. Who was that masked man? My, how time flies. We all recognize that music is one of our most important tools. How we use it is another story again. I have a gut feeling that most of us probably spend more time worrying about the music we use in the record shop or at home. Usually we go out here at a session like this and with 14 other callers breathing down our neck, buy a record and think that might do it for us. Then we get at home, we practice with it a little bit and try to see how it might apply to the kind of programming that we have in mind or that we intend to do. And what happens very often is that we spend time thinking about what is that we can do with it and how it will affect our program. And once we've done that, though, we get out there and we just use it like we didn't spend that much time with it. We kind of let go of the fact that we've spent a lot of time considering all the aspects of the music and how we can relate to it and how the dancers might relate to it. And then we spend so much time on our choreography and some of the other things that we do that we don't give the dancers a chance to dance, to relate, to react, and to interact with the music. We have, I think, three different approaches to that, and the three panelists on the program here this afternoon are going to be discussing just those things. We use music in our patter presentations. We use music in our singing call presentations. And we also use music as a showmanship tool, as a tool for our efforts on the microphone as a performer, as an entertainer. We use our music in many ways in that regard. And what we're going to be doing here this afternoon is with the help of an amplifier. Try to show you how some of these things might apply. The emphasis and the focus, again, is the use of the music that we use as a tool. Part of the problem is that we don't have live music with us. With live musicians of any kind of confidence, we can have a conversation with the musicians beforehand and tell them exactly what it is we have in mind and work with them. When we buy one of those black pizzas over there, we have to deal with whatever we have bought, and we can't change it. The music is built into the wax, and we have to work with it as is, and what we do with it has an awful lot to do with the success that we might have as a caller. As I say, we're going to discuss this in look at it through three different windows. One, from the window of our patter calling. Secondly, through the window of our singing calls. And thirdly, how we might use it as showmen and entertainers and performers. The bottom line is, in all three situations, we're out to entertain the dancers and keep them enjoying our square dance activity. The three panelists who are going to be dealing with the subjects, we're going to have Don Williamson, who is the operator and proprietor of Red Boot Records, going to be talking to us about pattern music. We're going to have Jerry Haag, who is one of the owners and proprietors of Chaparral, talking to us about singing call. And I don't own or propriet nothing. And I use the product, and I'm going to be talking to you about how this might be done from the standpoint of showmanship. So if Jim is just about ready, I'm going to turn it over to Don. Don, you can stall for another minute or two on the microphone.
I've seen too many records. Can I use that one? Okay. Okay, for some strange reason, I like to hold my mic in my hand. But we do it this way some, too. Just a couple of comments before we get started. We're going to play a few records here, which I'm sure most of you will recognize some of the tunes. But at the first, I would just like to say, I personally, and I'm sure you're the same way, nothing excites me more than to get in the mail or to get, whether we do it or whoever does it, a good hoedown. It just thrills me to get a hoedown that I enjoy. 2 or 3 months later, I use it so much I get tired of it, and I'll lay it back, and then next year I go looking for it again. And how many good ones have I personally lost? But I'm sure you'll all agree, and from the comments that we get at the booth, what's your latest hoedown, or do you have any good hoedowns? I think maybe there's some. All of us stay in this mad rush to get the best and the mostest and the quickest of all these hot singing calls out that we overlook. Maybe we should all spend just a little bit more time on our pattern music, since in a regular dance we have 8 or 9 tips. We should use that many different hoedowns, and you can only call the singing call one time. So perhaps we producers might think about that a little bit more, and to get a few more hoedowns with variety.
Switch here just a minute. We might work.
Do what?
Check 1, 2.
Testing 1, tasting. Very good.
Okay.
Okay. 1, 2. That one's off and this one's on. Okay, fine.
You said you wanted to hold it in your hand.
Well, microphone. What a sharp cookie. Where was I when all that started? I won't say what I started to say, but I really had a comeback for that right there. As I say, a good hoedown is most refreshing. One of the things that begins to bother me, too, is that though you guys and gals that call at some of the festivals where a lot of callers are involved, have you ever gone by a certain hall and they announce, here comes this caller, and he puts on Mountain Dew by Chaparral, and you hear it, and you're walking down there, and then here comes another, and he puts on the same thing. I mean, the callers, you hear the same thing over and over and over and over. It's an excellent, maybe at that particular time, the best or one of the best in a lot of the guys' eyes, and it's overused. So maybe there are ways we could, and whoever is responsible for programming the larger dances could think of that. We usually write down the singing calls we do to keep from doing that twice. But the hoedown itself, no matter how good it is, should be varied. And as Bill indicated earlier, the hoedown as well as the singing call certainly should be used to set the mood, the pace for what it is we want to accomplish at the dance. And we overlook a lot of times. I do, because I'm guilty of the same thing. If I get that hoedown, it just thrills me. I've got to use it at least twice that night. I'll try to not do it over that, but I've got to use it at least twice. But the thing we want to do, and I'll say that again, and then I'll get right on with these records, is to set the mood to accomplish for what particular tip, what you want to do. Use a hoedown that will give you that effect. And then your singing call, as Jerry will be talking about, can just add to that and get your whole tip, the theme, across what you want to do. There are certain times when you don't want to do something, certain times when you do want to do something. There's one other point, and we'll talk about this perhaps as we go along, selecting hoedowns, about whether or not to have a big, strong fiddle lead or what have you in it. Some of the people like that. Some do not. Some prefer a little more rhythm, maybe with some music in it, but not too much lead to where the caller will have a tendency to sing the song as he goes along. And there's some things like that that are strictly individual with us. I personally don't care for a lot of lead. But if you are trying to build up the floor, if it's time to get them excited, you might want to use a hoedown with a little more lead to give it a little drive. And with that in mind, I'm going to start playing these tunes. Now, I decided to just pull out, I can think of 20 hoedowns that I don't have right here. But these are some records that I'm particularly using myself right now in calling a dance. So if I have 10 minutes, probably 5's already gone. I'll do this quickly and just relate to you what I would be thinking as I select these tunes and go along, what I'm trying to accomplish in setting the mood for the particular tip. So here goes. The first one, right at this moment, I have 2 red boots. I wonder why. But for a while now, I have been using this record or a couple of others there, and I'll explain that, to open the dance. I want a hoedown that will start it off good. I want it zippy, peppy. I don't want the wildest thing I can use, but I don't want a just plain rhythm that I would use in my workshop tip later on. So I want a good, snappy hoedown. This is one that I have personally been using. I like to start out the dance. It's called Do on red boot. You've heard that. I'm not going to bother. I'll just tell you the label if anybody's interested in these. If you haven't heard them and would like to pursue the number, we'll be glad to give it to you later. Another one, this one is just out, and just this past week I've started using it. It's similar in nature with the banjo. It has a mandolin over in there and a little bit of fiddle, but not too. This is my way of starting off the dance. Lonesome Road Blues on red boot, just out. We do have a few copies out there if you can. My second tip, I mentioned this record, I'm going to throw it in here. I used it. I used the singing call version. I had another one. I have had 3 copies of this. I had to borrow this one from Mike Hoos a while ago to play here because people do, something happens to my records at festivals. I don't know what it is. But anyway, right now, Jerry, I don't have a copy of that. I'd like to talk to you about that. But here is the one I mentioned. I had there last year. I was using this and at various times, and one of those that you'll use twice a day. Have to play much of that one. That's Chaparral's Mountain Dew. It was one that we all like so well you'd have a tendency to hear too much of, in my opinion. But if you don't have that one, for heaven's sake, you should have. Right now, if I had to select, probably my favorite is this one, and this is on Elmer's label, ESP. It's called Bones. I use it my second tip, which I try to do some of my best stuff on the second tip. This has a good effect of the sticks or bones or what's in there. Did anybody notice anything particular about that? It's a good hoedown, of course. That's ESP called Bones. It's the same song as Do, except it's a different style. And on these hoedowns, who cares what the tune itself is, but the instrumentation, the mix of the music, you can have a whole different effect. So really, on hoedowns, it's not really all that important what the tune itself is. Okay, here's another one that's been one of my favorites the last year or two, however long it's been out, and it's another one of my second tip, or a lot of times I'll use this on the third tip when I like to sneak in my workshop thing or whatever I'm going to do for that particular dance. I personally try to get a little something special in on tip number 3 when I'm on the road. Sometimes tip number 2 at home. This is 10-20 on hi-hat. It's a guitar plunkety-plunk type. Another thing that I consider, and that's one of them, I got dancer reaction. Dancers would, and callers too, but dancers would come up to you, and I've had them more than once to ask what that tune is. And you know, if dancers do that, you can say, well, they must enjoy that. And that's the thing about it. Regardless, some of us might be a little prejudiced in our thinking and our habits. We just want to use the same thing over and over, but we need to be consistent in that and think of the dancers and what they enjoy. Now, here's one on rhythm. It's an old one, but I use both sides of this one on tip number 2 and 3. This is hot and sassy on rhythm on one side, and I don't even look. I'll use both sides of it. The other side is smooth and something. I seem to be a little bit heavy on banjo. I like a banjo, but if you'll notice, 10-20 hoedown is guitar, and then there are others I have as we go down through here. Bill, you'll have to cut me off when you want to get me to shut up. Smooth and easy on the backside. Very good rhythm with a little different sound on that one. Tip number 4. I like to think I have them built up for my first peak of the dance, and I'm still going up, and I'm not leveling down when we're thinking about using music and pacing the tone of the dance. 3 more minutes. Okay, I'll hurry. I sometimes will use a little extra lead and a little more drive on tip number 4, and I don't believe I'm going to get to tip number 5. But this is Sugarfoot Rag on Red Boot. Sugarfoot Stomp, we have some of those out here. Okay. This one I would, this Chicago country has something out here I've just fallen in love with, and the Red Boot boys are doing this one on the road, but I could have killed him for putting these voices on the instrumental side because it interferes, but we're doing it anyway, and we're going to get us one without it. But you to call by yourself might like this. But this would be a good hoedown probably with a lot of drive, if it didn't have those voices on it. It's keyed up high, but that's good. The key of those last 2 were keyed higher. The Sugarfoot Stomp is in the key of A. You'll find that the tunes recorded in the key of A and on up a little bit have a little bit better harmonics as far as drive. I've got one more comment and I'll get out of here. What was the last one? That was on Chicago Country, I'm Ready to Go. Brand new singing call. It's a little gospel flair to it, but you can have them climbing the walls with it. There's a lot of other things I'd love to say, but and I had some here I was going to play with what I consider too much fiddle you want to get old-time sounds, the traditional sound of this one on Gold Star, Ragtime Annie. That's a good one for variety. Using singing calls are good, and here's one, and I bet nobody but me ever did, and I'll quit for the moment on this one. I found one. This has a terrific upbeat or something. It's an old J-bar key called False-Hearted Girl that Dick Jones did a good job on the singing call. But I got in the habit of using this for a hoedown, and it does not have a heavy bass like we record most of our tunes, but it does have a terrific afterbeat. And for some reason, if you have this old record, try it as a hoedown sometime, and for variety, and see the floor response you'll get. They will. There's a lope to it or something. Those dancers will just pick that up and go with it. Okay, I'll quit with those comments, and perhaps we can talk again later. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I think that I just made a snap decision here. Rather than have Jerry talk next, then have me talk for the final presentation, since my presentation on the showmanship aspects of the music we use will apply to both patter call and singing call music. I think what I'll do is give you some a brief insight into the showmanship potential in pattern music while we're talking about pattern music, and then bring Jerry on. Then when he's through with that, I'll give you some information on the singing call showmanship we might be able to use. On pattern music, one of the things that I think might be very, very valuable to keep in mind as a programming tool, as a programming device, is in line with what Don has been doing, is to find some of the patter music that has been recorded in the past that has a lot of programming potential that goes even beyond some of the things that, some of the differences, some of the variations that Don has been demonstrating here. For example, this is one that I think makes a marvelous counterpoint, is a change of pace for any kind of pattern music, and one that dancers immediately pick up on. I have to tell a story about this. I used to religiously, and I still do, I think, just force a habit, change my patter record for every tip that I call. And one night at a pizza parlor, I happened to mention this to another caller, and some dancer says, "Really? I thought it was the same one all the time." So my effort went unnoticed by the dancers. And when I finally decided, a lot of the reason we do that, and most of us do, I think, is that we need the change. We need the music different to keep from getting bored with the same thing over and over again. We need additional inspiration. Well, this change of pace is important for us as well as the callers. And wouldn't you agree, this is a whole different style of music, and yet a very acceptable patter record. I wish we had more of this kind of music, you record producers. Put that on, the dancers' ears go, "Ooh, what's he doing?" It's Q-Bam on K-Lox. And when it came out, it was a biggie, but no one ever did it again, anything like that. Very, very nice. I also like, every once in a while, to change the pace. Now, I don't do this every dance I call, but I do this every once in a while to give the dancers a feeling of something traditional. You have to change your patter style, but you can do this, just to let them know this kind of music is still around. And you can call to that. And you'll find all of a sudden they'll start to move with the music. Not all the time, but once in a while it's a nice change of pace. If you look real hard, you're liable to find a patter record sometimes that has a break, a 4-beat silent break, when the musicians all shut up. And what happens when that happens? Let me put it on for a second. This is an old one that on Sets in Order called Phrase Trails. When that happens, what you don't understand is, when that break goes on, all of a sudden, all the lights in the house go down, a big baby blue spotlight comes out right there, right smack dab on the caller, and here I am, you lucky people. And if you sing over it, just pretend it's not there, you're missing a bet. It's a showmanship device. You can really use that. Another interesting thing is that the callers, I play a game with this one every once in a while, in which I will tell the dancers, whenever I say freeze, Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, turn to a pillar of stone. Down to the front and down to the corner. Join all your hands, circle to the left and freeze. Left down and come on back and do the right and left right. And they just stand there, chunk. Right? Programming with pattern music. I thought you'd never ask. I got to make a point with this. It's a sets and order record, an old sets and order record called Phrase Craze. It's now out of print. However, fortunately, they have reissued this as one of their premium records Sets and Order has, and you can get this. But you know what they've done? Let me show you. Same record. They filled in the hole. So I don't know where you'll find that one, and you can't have this because I treasure it. But the thing, bottom line point is that if you look, you can find musical things to do in the patter presentation, is to use the patter music for more than just simply accompaniment and something for the dancers to move to. You can make it a true programming tool. Anybody have any questions on the patter music to either Don or myself? Good. Let me turn it over to Jerry.
Thank you, Bill. Music really is our greatest ally. I think we all grow up with music, and finally we get a chance to sing to it and talk to it, and I think that probably is the one factor that brings us into this calling activity is the music, not necessarily initially. Then we sort of get interested probably in the patter and the things that can be done with choreography. But I think initially, most everybody is drawn by the fact that they can actually put a record on and start talking to it initially and seeing if they can sync their voice with it, like the caller at the club maybe, or they can actually put a singing call on and start singing a song. Maybe they don't use the cheat sheet. They might know the words. They buy a record that they know all the words to, so they buy the record, they put it on, and they sing the song. And people naturally like to sing all the time. They sing in church, they sing everywhere. And that's part of that's the part of this activity of calling that I think sells more dancers than any one single thing, is the singing. They'll even hum along if they don't sing very well. Sherry says she can't even hum the Star Spangled Banner, but I catch her every now and then. And I said, "Oh, watch it now. You're going to get carried away there. One of these days you're going to open up and sing." But that's the thing that draws us, I think, into the activity more than any one particular thing. I like to think in terms of when I'm programming my singing calls for an evening, I tend to think of it as a meal. We have an appetizer usually before we sit down for the main course, and that's sort of how I treat my first tip, I think, in terms of what can I give them this first tip that's going to make them want the rest of the meal and can hardly wait for it. A little appetizer. And Flip did one on, what label was that? Oh, Chaparral. Called Welcome to the Lake of the Ozarks. A real terrific number, if you haven't used it yet. A real terrific number that can be adapted to most any occasion, whether it's a festival you're working, a club dance, a special occasion at a club dance. You can fit the words to this particular tune and make it very effective. We use it at practically all of our Chaparral weekends now, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have used the song. Let me put a little bit of it on here. And I'll just maybe use CALLERLAB as a fill-in for the words. Circle left. Hey, welcome to CALLERLAB in Phoenix. Hey, we know you're gonna have a ball. swing with your girl in your promenade. Well, now, welcome to CALLERLAB in Phoenix. Hey, this is where the good times begin. And it's very effective, very effective. When you fill that in with maybe something other than CALLERLAB, and we work in our round, whoever's going to be doing the rounds for that particular festival, we'll say welcome to Sacramento weekend or something of that nature. The Mills will keep your rounds and keep you dancing, and we'll use the people's names in them, and it's very effective. It's a very effective opener, and I guarantee you they can hardly wait for the second tip. They think, oh wow, well, I wonder what's coming next. It's just a great tool in programming. As I move into the rest of my program for the evening, again, I sort of tend to go along the same lines as using that meal formula. We get to the main course, and we want to entertain, we want to keep the attention of the dancers, and we want them to leap out of their chairs for the next tip. It's sort of discouraging when you put the music on and people are sitting around talking and they hardly notice that you're back up there, right? It's a little discouraging. So you want to keep that edge if you can. And that's what I and you and probably every caller in this room would like to have a little something over here that's going to say that's going to do that for me every time. Unfortunately, that's not there. But there are certain things you can do to keep that edge. And I'm sure that a lot of you have heard some of the real pros and how they have handled that very situation. I tend to think of it as building the program from that opening tip into a peak. Somewhere around the third tip or fourth tip, I'll want to peek into something that I've got in my case that I'm almost certain is going to grab those people, and they're going to be sitting right about here, about that fourth tip. You may want to bring them back down into what we call a lot of times the valley, and a nice smooth little number that will take them down there. Sometimes better singers will use two singing calls in the middle of a program. They'll use a nice smooth number followed by a hot jivey thing that'll hang them on the rafters. But you don't leave them there. Usually, you got to bring them down. Now, some guys are effective enough to put that charge into the dancers and have them there most of the evening. But not very many can do that. So I tend to work on peaks and valleys. I can take them usually there twice in an evening, and hopefully the last one is there, and they walk out the door maybe saying, wow, that was great, and I can hardly wait till the next time. That's, of course, how we like to leave them. Doesn't always work out, does it? I always like to listen to a piece of music as the records come in, and you can put the record on. If it's a tune that grabs you, then I start playing with the music a little bit. One that Don used a little bit ago that's out in Chicago, I'm Ready to Go, is a good example. I want to put just the music on for just a second. I want you to listen. That's what I'll do with that record when I first put it on, and then I start playing. Then I think, well, that's just about where I like that bass. It's got a little thump in there. Got that thump coming up from behind. Now notice when I take that out. That's going to lift the dancers when it's there. They don't know why, but all of a sudden, this has got a great upbeat in it. It's got a great upbeat in it. I like the key in it because you can do a lot of things with this particular call, and there are a number of them. This happens to be a current number that's out. There are a number of things you can do with a call like that to excite the dancers. There are a number of things that you can do. This one in particular, Don mentioned a little while ago, is a little on the high side. So don't worry about it being on the high side. Go underneath it. Just take it down an octave. You can do that on this song. It's not that, it won't be that low for you to do. And by the time you get to the end of the call, you can jump the octave and put it up here. Walk around that corner lane, seesaw your phone. Join on your hands, circle to the left. Hey, now the boys start on the right to roll it. One time around and then out and then left that corner, wave the ring. Sing hallelujah, oh hallelujah. Swing your girl around in your promenade. Okay, that's dropping underneath it. Now, by the time you maybe get towards the end, let me see if I can find the last time through on this. You're building along the way. First of all, let me see. You're building along the way. Maybe even in the middle break, you'll jump that octave. You'll jump that octave on this song. Let me see if I can find it. It's not easy to jump into the middle of the record. I think this is coming up on the second time, too. Hallelujah. Side face, grand square. Hallelujah. Why, hallelujah. I hear voices singing off the Lord. Well, hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Say, brother, you swing around and put them on the right in the circle. Go. Come on, circle to the left, go round and then out and left that corner. Come on and weave the way, sing hallelujah. Oh, hallelujah. Oh, then you can jump right up on top of that thing just as easy as you can go underneath it. By then, all of a sudden, you've gone from here to here, and you can watch the floor. Usually, you'll see it happen. About the time you start to move up on that song, that floor comes right with you. Now, depending on how what your range will let you do, but experiment with them. And forget that you've got treble and bass knobs on your machine. You'll always want to check each tune that you do as you start to learn the song. Make sure you're moving around on those knobs. Make sure that you find where it is. When I find the particular speed that I like the record, I put it right on the label. 45 and a half, 46, 42 on my particular machine. Each machine seems to vary just a little bit, even though the strobes look the same. For some reason, you don't get the same feel. So when you, on your particular machine, where you find that the feel is right for you, don't put the record on and try to think then, I see now, where do I usually do this one? It's right on there. Just put it right on the record. Very easy to do. Another very effective tool in your programming singing calls, one master that's on our staff is Burl Main. He's a master at involving the dancers. He'll get them involved in singing it for him. And he'll call, for instance, on this particular record, "Show Me the Way to Go Home." All right? Probably everybody in the country knows the words to "Show Me the Way to Go Home," right? So he'll call upon the dancers to help him with it. He'll say, now when I say girls, you come in and sing that part of the song. When I say boys, you just come in and sing the next part of the song. Then he'll put it on and he'll get them started. Side face, grand square. See, I haven't used it. Side face, grand square. Show me the way to go home. Let me get this down. If I had that speed up about 3 notches too high. Okay. Now, I'll try to hit it for you. Side face, grand square. Show me the way to go home. Girls, tired and I want to go to bed. You'll see the guys look at him and he'll say boys, and the boys will come in about an hour ago. And it went right to my head. And he'll involve them and it'll come off of the floor. Pretty soon, he has those people dancing and singing, and they're right here. And he hasn't had to do a lot except put the right emphasis in the right spot for him. You can do that with a lot of tunes, a lot of different tunes. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to kind of move right on around towards the end of my presentation on what I think good programming is. Right on through the meal, as you always have to have a little dessert at the end of any meal. So as you've taken those people up through those peaks and down through the valleys, and all of a sudden you're towards the end of your program for the evening, you'll try to leave them here. And probably one of the better numbers that you're doing currently is what you want to take them out on. Don't save the very best, or maybe you better have two. It's bad to take them out on the best thing you do and don't have anything else if they're standing there saying, "Man, we're not tired. Do one more." Die, brother, die right there. So no, well, wait a minute. That's it. And I got caught the very first square days I ever called. I did that.
I call it again.
That's what I did. But I didn't have any choice because I had only programmed and learned enough stuff. I was kind of pressured into becoming a caller anyway. So I memorized each piece of pattern and the singing call, and I had enough to get me through the program. And this is at home club, they're trying to give me some good support anyway. They didn't know that I was dying up there anyway. So they all start clapping. One more. I said, no, thank you. No, and they kept stomping the floor, and I finally took my little sheet and I said, well, here's my program. I've called everything I know. Which one do you want to do again? So I'm not sure that you want to get caught in that situation by not having something to come back with that is reasonably close to what you just finished with. So try to keep, some people like two desserts. You can see I haven't passed up too many. Let me quickly mention some of the things that I do as special, what I call specialty singing calls. I keep a file of specialty singing calls that I can use for different occasions. If St. Patrick's Day is coming around the corner, I pull out Danny Boy and some of my records in that will cover me for that evening. Maybe just a couple of them. Christmas time, I'm sure you all have Christmas records that you do. Keep a file on them so you don't have to all of a sudden say, "Oh, gosh, we're having a Mexican fiesta night," and you just thought about it. And where are all my little tunes that have all the little things I could use to make that a real fun night when everybody shows up in their Mexican attire? You can go to that file, pull them out, and you have them ready for and it's good programming. It's good programming to have those things there. Birthday and anniversary, they're very special to each individual, so don't miss the opportunity to sing happy birthday to everybody that had a birthday that week or since the last time the club got together. It's good PR. And anniversaries, you can always use a song to dedicate maybe to somebody that is having an anniversary, especially somebody that's maybe kind of popular within the club or people wouldn't know, and put on "Help Me Make It Through the Night." They like that. I think we're going to try to welcome some comment from the floor, and I'll just turn it back over to our moderator and let Bill take you on out.
Thank you, Jerry. Along the same lines, one of the major tools that I find that singing call music provides for the caller, that's an old friend many, many times. Maybe it's a tune he hasn't heard before, but many, many times he has heard that tune somewhere outside of square dancing. When you put on a record of Let Me Call You Sweetheart, or what was it when you just did a minute ago? That was Show Me the Way to Go Home. That's a friend. He knows that song, and he's very comfortable. He's very secure. He's in the midst of comfortable, friendly kind of things. And even in square dancing, after we've had our audience for a while in the hall, they get to know certain singing calls as old friends. And they appreciate that. They're comfortable with those. I've got a record here I'm going to play, and I guarantee you, before the second beat of the intro has gone by, you will know what this song is. This is a square dance friend. See if you don't agree. And the game is see if you can guess the tune. That's right. I never even played the song. All you heard was 2 beats of the intro. Well, that's the point. This is an old friend. We're very secure, very comfortable with that. And one of the major appeals we have in singing calls is that we play on the dancer's emotions using things that they are very comfortable with. We can do an awful lot of mood, mindset changes emotionally with the dancers, and just by varying the kind of calls that you have. Wouldn't you agree that this paints a picture very quickly of a certain kind, a certain mood, a certain feeling? That's a happy, bouncy, easy kind of a thing, right? Compare that with this. It paints an immediate picture, doesn't it? We go across the brazos to the cantina, yeah? Okay. Compare that with this. Right? A little Ricky Tick. Compare that with this. Aloha. Compare that with this. Oh, put out the lights and talk us off. Okay, whole different mood, different style. Well, one of the things that singing calls do for us... I thought it was a Chaparral record. Well, the ability... We can do a certain amount of that with the hoedown music, but we can do an awful lot more with singing call music. And the trick is to be aware of the particular mood that the call can set. The trick is to be able to know that if I put on that Hawaii song, it creates a certain mood, it plays on a certain emotion on the dancers. And if you can use that in your overall programming strategy, in your overall programming game plan, you're going to be that far ahead. Because we need to do that. And sometimes we need to do it right now. We may have planned something in our pattern program, didn't quite go over, and we need some other kind of a mood change very quickly to get us out of a bit of trouble. And if you know what kind of records you have and what mood that will set for you, that will be a very valuable thing. Another thing that, from a showman-like standpoint, that singing call music can do for you, and you have to look a little harder for these because the record producers aren't producing very many of them. And I want to talk about that in a moment. But most singing calls, the vast majority of singing calls, will have an either 8-beat or a 16-beat intro, and we need that to both tell the dancers at what rhythm they're going to move to, and tell the caller what rhythm and what tempo he's going to call to. But we also needed to kind of set the mood, set the stage right away, and if we can do that in a showman-like way, that's very helpful. I remember when this thing first came out, it was tremendous. It was a real showman-like tool for me. It allowed me to be a performer. You may recall this. You recall that, don't you? Oh, and they just ate that up, man. And every once in a while, something will come along that allows you to react to it and respond to it in a showman-like way. This is a very similar kind of introduction. The dancers say, "What's going on now?" It's Yama Yama Man on Longhorn. No one ever heard of it. No one ever bought it. What I did with this, as a showman-like device, I waited till the dancers' heads started to turn around, and I would say, ladies and gentlemen, the Hotsy Totsy Club proudly presents Marlene, her magic fans, and her two doves. Let's bring her out with a big hand. Here she comes. Well-founded partner, and John pants and circle left to go walking round the ring. And it got just that kind of response. Okay? My plea to the record producers is that kind of intro, a little showmanship, a little pizzazz, a little bit of showbiz would help us do an awful lot of things. The same thing is true with the ending of a lot of our songs. Most of them also end with a standard reprise, either 8 beats or 16 beats, of the basic melody. Every once in a while, they leave it. This is one of my favorites. Good record. They won't believe me, holy cow, they'll never believe me if my friends could see me. They won't believe me if my friends could see me now. That opportunity to get down on my knees and sing Mammy, you know, when all the lights go out and that blue spotlight comes right down and hits me, I wouldn't sell out for $1 million. Well, we can use that. That is nice stuff, and I wish the record producers would give us more of that. But it's another way to use singing call music in a showman-like way. One of my favorite endings of all is one that appeared on a McGregor on Everywhere You Go. And it's not very, what's the word I want? It's not very brash. It's kind of nice and easy and comfortable, but it's different. To follow you everywhere you. Here's the part I like. Everywhere you. Isn't that nice? We don't get many of those, and I think we should, fellas, work on that. I said earlier, one of the things that we buy when we buy the record is whatever they have decided to cast in immortality for here forever, right? The thing that we can change, though, is the dance. We can do many things with the dance, but we also can change the name of the song. There's no reason in the world. Now, I wouldn't do it with something like Summer Sounds or something with like Show Me the Way to Go Home. But on some of the songs that aren't quite on everybody's fingertips, if you can find something in that tune and change it somehow to make it fit your needs, that would be to your advantage, I think. One of the classic examples of that I use is a record came out on Belco many years ago called Shake Hands, Friends, You're from Texas, and it's a standard country western tune. When this thing first came out, I wasn't long out of Brooklyn. I'm a New Yorker way back before I went to California. And I could never quite get myself to say, shake hands, friends, I'm from Texas. Because it was just not my style. It had a false note to it. So what I decided to do was and I liked the music on this, and I wanted to do it, but to make it fit my style, I told the dancers, this singing call, you didn't know this singing call has the longest title of any singing call that's ever been done before. This has the longest title, and here it is. Well, what I'm really saying, guys, is be creative. Use your imagination. There are many things you can do if you let your imagination run riot. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to give things a try. You're going to have some flops, but you're going to have some successes, and those are the things you're going to capitalize on. They'll work for you. There's a singing call that I was lucky enough to record a number of years ago called 19 Minutes to Go. I'm sure none of you guys remember this one now, but there was a folk song called 19 Minutes to Go that had some fellow on a scaffold ready to be hung singing about he had 19 minutes to go, and then he had 18 minutes to go, then he had 17 minutes to go, and so on. Before that, they sprung the old trap door. And I took some record that we already had. This was called If You Come Back to Me. It was a very nice little singing call, but it didn't have the pizzazz I wanted, so we converted it to this. Wrong record. Lock the doors. Looks like my filing system. Take any card. I can't find it. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I don't have it here. Just don't see it. It's in the box. One more. Why is it always on the bottom? Why is that? No, that's not it. Jerry stole it. That's what it is. Is it here? No. Darn. Look at the pizza box. Just use any standard tube. That's what I'm going to wind up doing in a minute. Doggone, that's terrible. Here it is. I got it. Found it, the last one. Wouldn't you know? Well, I'm standing on this deck with this here rope around my neck. I got 19 minutes left to go. And it won't be long before they're gonna spring this old trap door. I got 18 minutes left to go. Left Alabama that corner, come on back to right in that land. I got 17 minutes left to go. Promenade old Clementine, it's getting closer all the time. I got just 16 minutes left to go. And I do that, and I had to wound up so that at the very end of the song, I had no more minutes left to go. Right? Interesting thing to do, and again, an example of creativity. The story I like to tell with this one is that the real problem is you forget how many minutes you have left. Well, I had a code with Betty. Betty would stand down in front of the stage, and she'd be like this. That's 13 minutes. That was 12 minutes, early on. And then when it got to this was 3 minutes again, and 2 minutes. And the last one was always 1 minute left to go. True story. Well, I guess what I'm really saying, guys, is that we can do an awful lot more with the music that we use, both on their side of the microphone when they're making those records for us, but also on our side. There's more to doing a singing call than just taking the record off and just singing the words and doing it. You've got to find just the right showman-like approach. Every song has a different message for each of us. We'll each do it differently. There's no problem with that at all. Every one of us will sound differently if you look for it. Try to personalize it. Try to make it unique and special to you, something that no one else has done, and it'll work for you. We have about another half hour for questions and answers. Anything we've been talking about at all? Anybody?
How did you end that 19 minutes ago? How did you end that?
Goodbye, cruel world. I got no more minutes left to go, and off they go, right? One time at a party, they even had a little casket, and they carried me off. Yes, sir. On the mic, Wayne, please. Right up center stage. The button that says on? No? Oh, we unplugged it when we plugged this one in. I got to put it back. I hope this is being taped. We're in trouble. Well, then this one won't work. Why don't you come up and use this, Wayne, please, if you would? That won't work either. Use it.
Well, I wanted to know what the views are in the figures that are on singing calls about changing the figure each and every time or keeping it and repeating it 4 times in a row.
I will ask the panel to comment on that.
Jerry, you want to go first?
I think a lot of it is determined by how good the figure might be. If it's a good figure, use it all the way through. It gets a different feel from the side position than it does from the head usually anyway. And if it's a good figure, you can use it all the way through. Now, if the figure sometimes we avoid using a figure that comes with a singing call. I was going to mention this a little earlier and thought maybe I was running out of time, but if you have a singing call that you think is a nice call, don't change the figure on the call just because you think the figure is too difficult. Put a little effort into it first. Try it, because usually whoever recorded that song has put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into that particular figure most of the time, and they have worked hard at it. Take the time to use the figure. If you have to use the figure or the material at least ahead of it in your patter to get the dancers familiar with it, do that. That's a great tool. Use that ahead of it. Then when you put the singing call on, they'll have success with it. They'll like it, and it'll go for you. If you don't do that and you take the chance that they're going to be able to dance it, and it is a more difficult figure, down they go, and nobody likes to stand around while you sing, then the success rate dwindles real fast. But a lot of times you change the figures because you have used a workshop tip and you put a singing call on. You want to incorporate the material that you used in the workshop into a singing call. You change the figure. Sometimes the figure that was written for it is a mainstream figure you're calling a plus dance. You have a good plus call that fits with that music, and you use that. So the conditions vary, and sometimes it's good, sometimes no. Use the 4 times on the same figure.
Variety wouldn't have anything to do with it.
To some degree, but I say it's almost a case of, if it's a real simple little figure, then I'd say, yeah, change it around. Move around on it, because it can be they lose interest in it if there's nothing else in that song.
I was sitting here just going to have to say, and then you said the exact thing I was going to say there. In a sense, there are some songs going way back, songs like Summer Sound. Summer Sound was so popular that it was almost criminal to change a figure like that, and everybody used to it because there are certain things that sell certain songs that might not apply to other songs. But then there's many, some of my favorites, like that Show Me the Way to Go Home, or the old familiar tunes. It seems to be the trend, and I think a very effective trend in our activity is callers that can do it, and many of you can, is change the figure, write it to include the workshop, specialize in that to some degree. Don't just throw it on and hash it. All of us do that some. I guess I do it more than I should, because but I find this a trend even in advanced level. Some of the callers work out some real nice figures, and boy, it can really be effective. A nice tune to climax, even with some extra choreography with the tune.
I think there's also one other consideration that needs to be fed into that equation, and that is some tunes lend themselves very readily to mix and matching singing call dances or improvising, hashing singing call dances. But there are some tunes where the phrasing is such that it becomes a lot more difficult, and not very many callers, in my experience, are able to do that glibly and easily, are able to wing it that quickly. And I typically tend, on songs like that, to marry a particular dance to that particular song, because I've worked the phrasing out so it works just exactly right for that particular tune. There are others in which I will just free and easy change everything as it goes along. But if I know I'm going to change, if I'm going to want to capitalize on a workshop figure, for example, in my singing call, I won't use that heavily structured, heavily phrased singing call tune for that kind of thing. Anything else? Yes, sir. Vaughn.
Vaughn Parrish from Colorado. I would like to know your opinions on the openers, usually in middle break and ending, where the caller starts the people weaving a ring from home position. They meet on the opposite side of the square, swing and promenade, and they have 16 beats to sing and only 8 steps from home. is it important to work that around so that the dancer dances 16 counts while the caller is calling 16? There are so many the other way that I just wonder what you feel about it.
Well, I don't like any 8-beat routine for a 16-beat figure, or vice versa. The music should fit the dance, and when I find that happens, I won't let that happen. That's my feeling. I marry the dance to the amount of time we have. That's very, very important. Along the same line, Vaughn, before I let these guys talk about that, I'm finding a very interesting thing. I'm used to swinging it home at the end of a promenade. And a lot of the singing call dances allowed you 8 beats for a swing. And now that people come home and they stand there for 8 beats, usually while I'm singing the words, the song, and I have to really emphasize. I want them to swing if I want them to do that. And what I find sometimes, even though they won't do it, they just don't like to swing anymore for whatever reason, and I'll have to figure out another dance where they'll get home in time not to swing, and still without interrupting the flow of the dance. So I'll make that happen. Again, I'm trying to make the dance, I'm trying not to have them stand around. In that situation you described, they'll be standing for 8 beats, wouldn't they? So I try not to make that happen. That's right. You guys want to comment on that?
Well, you've said essentially the same thing that I feel. One reason that some of the singing calls that you have a fairly short ending is because it is a short line on the end of it. Bang, 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 it's over. A lot of guys are uncomfortable to take a long ending on a record and string it out, and everybody stops. They don't swing. They don't do anything else. They just turn around and look at you like this, and you're up there, good like this, and sometimes it goes over. Sometimes the guy thinks, I wish this was a short ending on here, and get away from it. So there are two schools in that. If you can sell that ending and you can make a production out of it, it's fine. And we tend to put a fairly long ending on practically everything we do on Chaparral, but you can let that sort of fade if you're not into putting an ending on a call that takes the whole 32 sometimes. Normally 16 counts on that ending, but sometimes some of them have a 32. They'll just really string it out, But there again, this is something you have to personally think about. Any other questions on that?
I think in talking about what Vaughn said, what we try to do, and I know there are a few times we have been guilty of allowing this to happen, and there are some of the guys that maybe let this happen a little bit more for various reasons. I could name you a few, but I like to start the promenade. I believe this is what Vaughn's talking about. At home, where you'll have 16 beats. If you're going to have your partner exchange at the home, between your home and car, where you'll have 16 beats to promenade around, or if you weave the ring, if you meet your partner on the opposite side, then you just got 8 beats to come back. And that's what I don't like to do. There have been a few, and I think one just recently, and some don't feel like that's a problem because they lean towards weave the ring. They can get that line in there that's so good. But choreographically, I would agree with you. In 99 times out of 100, we should have the full 18 or 16 beats promenade around, or else have the line so that they wouldn't have they get home just at the right time.
Maybe another question over here.
Yeah.
Tell us who you are.
Pardon?
Tell us who you are.
Well, Mike Woods from San Diego. And in showing presentations of a singing call, usually like during the evening, like it's about the fourth tip where I want to get up on a high note, what I do is I have a song that I use very often. It's known as Do You Want to Go to Heaven on Red Root. Okay. And so what I do is, instead of just singing, the song saying, well, do you want to go to heaven, things like that, well, that's not too exciting. You need to get the people involved with the song. First thing I say, I need your help out there, and that, I say, do you see the light? Praise the Lord, do you see the light? And everybody will get kind of get that feeling, and then you put the music on, you get into it, and not only do you start singing, and you want to say, everybody say, do you want to go to heaven? But you start moving, making motions, and while you're singing the song, do you want to go to heaven? You go, do you want to go to heaven? Like that. And people will enjoy this. Get the body moving. So you just don't stand up there and you just start, well, do you want to go to heaven? If you show action with arms, use your hands and arms and extend them and reach out and say, say, we'll take my hand, get down there, reach for those people, touch those people's hands, make them part of that song. That's a very important thing that you want to incorporate in using the singing call. If you tie the dancers with the singing call and get them excited, get them to sing with it, and that's one of the things I'd like to share with you. So use your arms, reach out, get the people involved. That's what I like to do with any singing calls that I can do with.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Any other questions?